Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Wednesday. It is match day, Arsenal's penultimate game of this long season. Arsenal in action at Selhurst Park later this evening against Crystal Palace in what will be Roy Hodgson's final home game in charge of Palace after 4 years. He will be stepping down the club, announcing that last night, and yeah, certainly going to be an emotional evening you would expect at Crystal Palace. They're going to want to send Roy Hodgson off on a high note. Certainly adds a little bit of spice to the evening and makes Arsenal's job probably that little bit more difficult. Palace playing all but right as well, actually. I saw them play against... who was it? Who did they beat at the weekend? 3-2. Can't even remember who it was. I was watching, and they came back from that one. Looked like they were going to losing 2-1, but they fought back well and got the win. Played with a bit of freedom about them, which is a team which we'd expect from a team now who are relatively safe. Well, they are safe and have not too much pressure on their shoulders, and Benteke's scoring goals, so not going to be the easiest games for Arsenal today. There is a chance that Eze might be injured, though. He is a doubt, Roy Hodgson saying yesterday, which will be a boost to Arsenal because Eze is certainly showing that he is a Premier League player this season after that move from QPR. Him and Zaha zipping around, Townsend as well playing behind Benteke. Palace got a little bit more about them going forward than they have done in recent weeks. Aston Villa, that's who they beat 3-2 in the weekend, of course it was. So yeah, not going to be the easiest of games for Arsenal. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in this video. Look at the team news, look at my predicted 11 and some of the sort of key decisions, team decisions Mikel Arteta is going to have to make ahead of that game. So let's just get over a few things out of the way at first before we do that, and then we'll get on to the Crystal Palace game. So I wanted to start a little bit of comments from Martin Odegaard talking about his future. Obviously on loan at the moment till the end of the season, when he will be heading back to Real Madrid. Will he stay at Arsenal? Will he get a chance at Real Madrid next season? That's been the big sort of talking point since he's arrived in North London in January. He's been speaking to Sky Germany, had a little bit of words about his future. He said, "I am happy here at Arsenal. We will see after the season what will happen. I'm owned by Real Madrid, so we'll have to speak to them. It's important to understand what they want." Now, a lot of this is going to depend on who the manager of Real Madrid is, and it looks like it's not going to be Zinedine Zidane. That certainly seems to be talk coming out of Madrid. People who are connected to Madrid, they don't think Zinedine Zidane will be there next season, and a new manager will come in. There's been hints of possibly Raul stepping up from their B team, or Allegri coming in. Obviously, he hasn't had a job since leaving Juventus. And I think a lot of what's to do with Martin Odegaard's future is going to relate to who that manager is. It's pretty clear that Zinedine Zidane doesn't really rate Odegaard that highly. He's never really given him an opportunity, but a new guy might. And the word coming out of Madrid as well from people he speaks to over there is that the club themselves, they like Odegaard and think he's a player for the future. Maybe that is in a bit of a contrast to what Zinedine Zidane thinks. But if a new manager comes in and likes Odegaard and wants to give him an opportunity, then it could well be that he has a good chance of playing a lot more game time next season. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see when it comes to Martin Odegaard. Plenty of you actually don't want Martin Odegaard to stay. He's obviously not had the best of recent performances. I think he got injured at the worst time. He'd just come in, he'd settled down, he was suddenly really influential in the team. He had that fantastic game against West Ham, scored against Spurs, scored in the Europa League against Benfica as well. He was really playing well, and then he got that ankle injury when he was away on international duty in Norway, and since he's come back from that, he's been searching for his best form again. He hasn't really hit the heights that he had before that, so I think you have to take that into account a little bit. I think the majority of us, if we were talking about wanting Odegaard to stay after that West Ham game, pretty much everyone would be saying yes, absolutely, nailed on, keep him. But now a few people are kind of thinking, oh, he's not really done that much because he hasn't played that well in recent games. But I think you have to take that injury into account. He's a very good player. I think if Arsenal can get Martin Odegaard next season, then that's an opportunity they probably should take, because I think he's a very good player and he's going to be, and he's still young. He's going to get much better. I just think it's going to be pretty difficult, because if Arsenal want to get him on a permanent deal, then they have to spend big money. I think, as I said in previous videos when I've spoken about Odegaard's future, I think Arsenal's best opportunity of potentially getting him is if they can agree another long-term loan for the season, kind of like they did with Dani Ceballos when Dani Ceballos came back for that second season. Now, Ceballos is certainly going to go back to Real Madrid. That's one that's not going to be happening in the summer. We know that, but Martin Odegaard. I think there's certainly going to be discussions had between Arsenal, Madrid and the player once the season comes to an end and once Madrid know exactly what's going on in terms of their manager for next season and Zinedine Zidane's future. Okay, before we get to Crystal Palace game, just some more comments from Mikel Arteta I wanted to discuss, kind of talking about what his plans are for the summer, and as soon as the season finishes, what is he going to do? He's been speaking a lot in the last couple of days about it. He's talking about how he likes to relax. He's got his dogs and his kids, and he's looking forward to a little bit of downtime. And he was asked, what are you going to do in terms of the summer? What happens once the season comes to an end? And he says this: I want to reflect now in the next week or so when we finish, but I'm sure we've done a couple of things wrong. 100%, I can tell you that now before going through it. So how am I going to make much better decisions and get the best out of these players and get the best out of this football club and all the resources we have? I've spent a lot of time and effort identifying critical points to change and how those changes are going to be made, in which time frame we could do them, and I want to spend time building, creating with all the foundations that we have in place now, evolving the club and everything in the way that we want to do. So, for anyone thinking Mikel Arteta still might not be at Arsenal this season, next season, I think this is pretty clear. He absolutely thinks he's going to be at Arsenal next season, and as we all do, certainly all the noises coming from the club is that Mikel Arteta is not going to be having to worry about his job this summer, despite this difficult season that Arsenal have had. And you can see by that, in terms of the planning, that he is already thinking about what to do. And he carries on. He says, I want a pre-season where we can work with the players and create. I'm a really creative person. I really want to create and evolve. And a lot of time since I've come here, I've been determined to make some very, very difficult decisions that I had to do. But I want to start doing more and more and more, because the capacity that we have to do it is incredible. I am so excited about that, and I see at the moment of a lot of change as a big opportunity for our future. So Mikel Arteta excited about what Arsenal might be able to do this summer. He has hinted at that before. And finally, he was asked, are you expecting a busy summer in terms of the transfer market? I think we all are. We all know there's going to be a fairly big overhaul of this squad at the moment. In terms of outgoings and incomings. And he said, yes, if I have to answer every question about every possible transfer or what players might be leaving, we will be sitting here for hours. What I can say is that we know what we want to do, and there is a clear plan to put that together. It's true that there are a lot of decisions to make, because as well we have a lot of players on loan. Some of them have to come back, and we will see step by step and focus on the priorities that we have. Let's see how much we can do. It's pretty clear. We've said it. I've discussed it in these videos before. You guys know it. You've seen it and read about it before. There's going to be big changes at Arsenal this summer in terms of outgoings, in terms of incomings. I think the squad's going to look very, very different when the season gets underway next season, depending on whether Arsenal get European football, which is looking very unlikely. We will know more about that tonight at the end of the Crystal Palace game. But if they don't get European football, which we're all expecting, given where they are in the league right now, you think they're going to need a much smaller squad for next season, because you're not going to be able, it's been a struggle keeping players happy this season because of their numbers in the squad, and that's with Europa League football to play with, especially in the first half of the season when you've got the group stages, when you can really give players an opportunity. But if you don't have that this next season, you basically have just got the league games and a couple of League Cup games in the first half of the season, then it's going to be really difficult to keep players happy. It's going to be, we've seen it with teams who have been pretty much just playing in the Premier League. When you go back to when Leicester won the title, you go back to when Chelsea won the title, when they went in it, they were playing pretty much the same team week in, week out. There wasn't that much rotation. There was no need to be, because the players weren't really tired. They weren't playing that much football. And I think for Arsenal, that gives Arsenal an opportunity. I think it's, you can look at it as a positive for next season, but it also, in terms of the squad size, it's certainly something they're going to have to think about, because it's going to be very, very hard to keep so many of these players happy, because you're just not going to be able to give them minutes. You think of this season about the likes of Cedric, just players like that, and then coming back, people like Joe Willock, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, those sort of players. If they're not going to go, you can't really see them getting too much game time next season, so it's going to be incredibly hard to keep them happy. So that's why I think in terms of outgoings, you're going to see plenty of outgoings in the summer. If, and it's a big if, because it's not easy, Arsenal can get good deals for them and can find buyers for a lot of these players. Okay, let's turn our attentions a little bit to tonight's game, shall we? Like I said, the penultimate match of the season, Arsenal finishing at Brighton on Sunday, but they're at Crystal Palace tonight. Team news-wise, looking pretty good. Granit Xhaka trained yesterday after that injury. He was one of the two main big injury doubts. We know David Luiz is going to miss out. He won't be available for this one with that hamstring problem, but Granit Xhaka is on his way back. Whether he plays tonight, I still think it's probably pretty doubtful given he's only just come back to training. But it is a bonus that he is training. It's a boost, and you imagine that will certainly mean he should be involved on Sunday in the final game of the season against Brighton. Tonight, I think, might come a little bit too soon for Granit Xhaka, though. But having him back and available is certainly a boost going into summer. And it's a boost for him as well, because you must remember he's got the European Championships coming up this summer with Switzerland. So that's the team news. Balogun trained again with the first team. Will we see him involved tonight? I think a lot of you would certainly hope that we do, even if it's on the bench in a few minutes towards the end. That would be something to keep an eye on. In terms of Crystal Palace, like I said, their main injury news is that Eze is a doubt. Roy Hodgson saying a late decision will be made on him before kickoff. Okay, so sort of looking ahead to the game and the key decisions that Mikel's got to make, really. I think the first one is that you've got to think about, does he decide to give a few opportunities to players who haven't played too much now that the season is pretty much done and dusted? So we talked about Balogun. Do you give him minutes? Do you bring in someone like Miguel Aziz and give him minutes? A lot of fans have been calling for that in recent games. Arteta has so far resisted the urge to do that. Do you do it now in these final couple of games of the season? But also, you got the decision, do you go with a back three or do you go with a back four? Obviously, against Chelsea, he returns to the back three. It worked. Arsenal got a clean sheet. They got the 3 points. They look fairly solid against a very good Chelsea team. Do you stick with that now or do you go back to the back four? Personally, I think he'll go back to the back four. I think the back three was just kind of one-off to match Chelsea up in that game at Stamford Bridge. It was more of a tactical decision rather than an actual shift away from the 4-2-3-1 formation that we are used to seeing when it comes to Arsenal and Mikel Arteta, certainly this season. So that's a big decision for him to make as well. And then in terms of the sort of positional structure, I think you've got to look at who plays at centre-back. Again, it always seems to be the decision, do you bring Gabriel in or do you stick with the Mari holding partnership that Mikel Arteta certainly likes to use at the moment? Personally, again, I think we'll probably see Holding and Mari start in this one. And then who plays at number 10? Do you play Odegaard at number 10 or do you play Smith Rowe at number 10? If you decide to play Odegaard there, then you have the decision of what to make on the left-hand side. Do you go with Nicolas Pepe or do you move Smith Rowe out onto the left-hand side to accommodate both him and Odegaard? Again, I feel like from what we've seen from Arteta recently, he wants to play both Odegaard and Smith Rowe. So it's probably likely if he does go with Odegaard, then we'll see Smith Rowe over on the left-hand side. And then you have the option of who plays up front. Do you go in Lacazette, who is now back and fully fit, or do you continue to play Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, or do you throw the curveball and give Folarin Balogun his first Premier League start ahead of next season, when you would expect he is going to be getting a lot more game time? So plenty of decisions for Mikel Arteta to make. He wants to take this seriously. He spoke about it in his pre-match press conference. He doesn't see this as just a nothing game at the end of the season. He still thinks there's something to play for. He says after the Chelsea game and sort of taking on the momentum from that, he said, we have been much more consistent in the last few weeks of the Premier League, which is really positive. We have 2 games to go and things are still mathematically possible, so let's try and get the best possible outcome. When he was asked about putting on pressure on the teams above them like Spurs and West Ham, he said that's all we can do at the moment. It's not in our hands, but what we can do is win our 2 remaining games, which is possible, and then we see what happens. So from those comments, you don't really think that Mikel is going to make a load of changes and throw in the kids and experiment in these last 2 games. It feels like he's going to go with a sort of typical starting 11 that we've seen from him certainly throughout the second half of the season, and look to get 6 points on the board and hope that Tottenham and West Ham both slip up. Okay, let's talk predicted 11s, shall we? This one's always a difficult one to call when it comes to Mikel Arteta. Like I said, this isn't the 11 that I want to see. It isn't the 11 that I've got information on that Arsenal are going to use. This is me just trying to predict what Mikel Arteta might do for this game. So I've gone with him going back to the 4-2-3-1 that we've seen from him fairly recently, and not the back 3 that we saw against Chelsea. Going to go with Leno in goal. Matt Ryan is back fit, again available, but I don't think he will be starting this one. I go for Leno again, and I'm going with a back 4 of Chambers at right back, centre-back partnership of Rob Holding and Pablo Mari, and having Kieran Tierney at the left back. Central midfield, Granit Xhaka, like I said, is back training, but I still think this one's going to come a little bit too early for him. So I'm expecting him to sit this one out. He might well be on the bench. So I'm going to go with Thomas Partey and again Mohamed Elneny, who was so impressive in the win against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And then the front four I'm going for with Saka on the right, Martin Odegaard playing as the number 10. I'm going to go with Smith Rowe as the left winger and Aubameyang as the central striker. So the likes of Lacazette and Pepe will have to make do with a place on the bench this evening. Again, that is just my predicted 11. That's not based on any information that I have from Arsenal on what the starting 11 is going to be. It's just me predicting what Mikel is going to do at Selhurst Park. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Do appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the rest of your day today. Enjoy the game. Fingers crossed we get an Arsenal win. Like I said, I'm not at Selhurst Park tonight. I couldn't make it because of some childcare issues, but I will be watching the game as usual and covering it from home. So keep your eyes peeled to goal.com and to my social media feeds throughout the game for all the latest updates as Arsenal look to continue a little bit of momentum as we get towards the end of the season. Till then, everyone, have a good day. I'll speak to you soon.